What is going on, everybody? This is James Kushnerek live here, another edition of Real Steel Sports on Spreaker Web Radio. Today I'm going to talk about something that recently broke over the past couple of days, and that would be the parting of ways of sorts between John Fox, the head coach of the Denver Broncos, and the Denver Broncos themselves, and why I think I've pretty much pinpointed the number one reason why John Fox left, and also who I think should honestly take the reins in Denver. So without wasting any more time, let's get started. All right, now first off, let's analyze John Fox as a coach. So we kind of need to have a little bit of a background on what this guy is really like and what he's done as a coach in the NFL, on a pro, or on a whatever kind of level since he really became prominent in the league. I think John Fox is a very, very good football coach. I do. That's my honest opinion of him. But let's look at his coaching record. He took over as the head coach of the Carolina Panthers in 2002, the year after they went 1-15. The results after that: in 2002, he won 7 games and the Panthers missed the playoffs. 2003, they won 11 games, the NFC South, and lost to the Patriots in that incredible Super Bowl. In 2004, 7-9 and regressing. 2005, they got the wild card in the NFC wild card and lost to the Seahawks in the NFC Championship game. 2006 and 2007, 8 wins and 9 wins. 2008, they won 12 games, were a team with a first-round bye, lost to the Cardinals in the divisional game. That'd be the year the Cardinals would lose in the Super Bowl. 2009, they won 8 games. In 2010, they won 2, and John Fox was let go. Well, after that, Ron Rivera was hired. In 2011, they won 6 games, I believe. 2012, I believe they won 7. 2013, they won 12 games. In this past year, they won 7, 8, and 1. Now, let's look at what he's done with the Broncos, because immediately after getting fired by Carolina, Denver needed a coach that picked him up. They've won the AFC West all 4 years he's been there, with 8, 13, 13, and 12 wins respectively. So for a very respectable 46 and 18, which is the best winning percentage in Broncos history amongst coaches with at least 50 games coached. His career record in the playoffs in Denver, though, is 3-4. And if you look at it, the 3 of the 4 years he had Peyton Manning, who was playing at an all-pro level. And it's kind of ironic, of the 3 playoff wins the Broncos had with with John Fox as the coach, one of them was with Tim Tebow, and the other 2 were with Peyton Manning. So Tebow literally has half the playoff wins Manning does in their Bronco tenures. It's actually pretty funny, to be honest with you, because I think John Fox is a good football coach, but he suffers the same thing that a lot of other defensive-minded coaches have. Guys like, I'm trying to think of some really good examples of defensive-minded, like Marty Schottenheimer is probably the best example of that. Bill Cowher, early in his career, was a great example of that. They're too conservative, they play not to lose, and instead of waiting for their opponent to make the mistake, they should be trying to make the play, but they don't. If you look at the way the Broncos played in the years that he was here, the first game they lost in the playoffs was the Ravens. They would, of course, win the Super Bowl. What can be said about that is this. The Broncos were the best team in the AFC that year by a large margin. Peyton Manning was first team All-NFL and the runner-up to Peterson in the MVP race. But in the playoffs, they literally had so many chances to close out the Ravens. If they'd have let Peyton Manning air it out on 3rd down, get the first down, run out the clock, they're in the AFC title game hosting the Patriots. But instead, they elected to run it. They punted. Joe Flacco threw the Hail Mary to Jacoby Jones, and then in second overtime, I believe, they got the field goal off another Manning interception, and then they won the game. In 2013, the Broncos had the best offense in league history, scoring 606 points. Manning threw an NFL record 55 touchdowns, and the Broncos, with a respectable 24-17 win over the Chargers and a 26-16 win over the Patriots, advanced to the Super Bowl. This is where the difference in head coaches really makes a difference, because I know if you were to ask somebody on paper who's a better coach between Pete Carroll or John Fox, a lot of them would say John Fox, and it's fine. Those people just don't know what they're saying, because let's think about it this way. Even aside of the Super Bowl ring, I want you to look at how they handle their teams. John Fox, I believe, was a little bit nervous heading into the Super Bowl against the Seahawks, and his team looked a little nervous as well. He looked kind of dazed and kind of apprehensive whenever they showed him on the sideline. Fast forward to how the Seahawks looked. Pete Carroll had his trademark smile. He was amped up. He was ready to go, and his team followed suit. And that led to, I believe, a 35-0 lead before the Broncos even knew what hit him. As the head coach of the USC Trojans for how many years, Pete Carroll knew how to handle his team on championship day. He knew how to handle a team whenever they're trying to win a championship. And his records kind of says it all. Look at his results at USC speak for themselves. Look at what he did as the head coach of the USC Trojans. Other than the Rose Bowl loss to the Texas Longhorns, which was overturned, which was, kind of vacated due to sanctions, he won the Orange Bowl, the Rose Bowl. He won 3 straight Rose Bowls after that, and then he won the Emerald Bowl before finally going into the pro ranks again. He knows how to handle a team come Championship Sunday. Meanwhile, if you look at John Fox, he really doesn't. He's had a pretty decent history of his teams showing up and not playing well at the right moments. Like in the Super Bowl against the Patriots, the Panthers had been giving the Patriots the same look the entire game. So when Brady drove right up the field, he knew what to expect. Even though it was only like 50 yards because of the friggin' missed kick out of bounds by John Casey. Ultimately, the reason why John Fox was fired was because of that killer instinct and the fact that he did not have it. He did not have the go-ahead. He did not have the mental foresight or the fortitude to have confidence in his team, to be ballsy, and to make the play when he needed to. Because let's put it this way. Bill Cowher, the last 2 or 3 years he coached the Steelers, had finally woken up and had that kind of gambler's mentality. And look what it led to. A 15-1 season, a 11-5 season that led to a Super Bowl run, 3 straight road wins, and then a win over the Seahawks. And then in 2008, the way the offense for the Steelers played the second half of that year, although they went 8-8, was vindictive of Cowher's coming of age as a coach, even though he would resign after that and he hasn't coached since. Tomlin is a defensive coach who actually was the defensive coordinator for one of the best run defenses in NFL history, being the 2006 Minnesota Vikings. They, as a team, was one of only 2 teams in NFL history to give up fewer than 1,000 rushing yards to opponents in a season, 985. Which, if you average that out, they're giving up 61.5 rushing yards a game. So he's a very, very smart defensive coach. He's a very good defensive football coach. But guess what? He knows when the game's on the line, he knows he has to go for it. And that means showing some real testicular fortitude and making some gutsy calls. Now you look at this year, the loss to the Colts. I don't really know if I can pin that loss on John Fox. And the reason why is this. Peyton Manning reportedly, of course, of his torn leg muscles or whatever he had that clearly hampered him. I mean, I've gotten a chance to watch a lot of the tape because my assumption after the game whenever they lost the Colts was that Peyton Manning's arm was too weak, he couldn't make the throws, he was underthrown for a reason. I watched his footwork from the early part of the season. I watched it from 2 games in particular. I watched it from the game between the 49ers and the Broncos, in which the Broncos absolutely just embarrassed them. I also watched the game film from the one whenever they put up 41 on Arizona, and then I also watched footage of the game where they blew out the Raiders 41-17. And in all those games, I could see Peyton Manning's footwork was crisper, it was cleaner, and he was using his feet to help strengthen his arm and propel the ball down the field. I watched some highlight films of the games against the Chargers, the third to last game at the end of the season, which they won 22-10. I watched the games against the Bengals, the Raiders, and against the Colts in the playoffs. Peyton Manning's footwork was just despicably slow. He was deplorably slow. He had no movement whatsoever. And I think if Peyton Manning would have had better movement, I think his arm would have been a little fresher. I think that there was a really good chance the Broncos probably would have pummeled Indianapolis. I know the Colts say they got the defensive game plan for how to play against the Seahawks, how to play against the Broncos from the Seahawks, but in reality, I think they got it from Chuck Pagano's brother, who's the defensive coordinator in San Diego, who's given Peyton Manning fits in the past. The bottom line is this. I've gotten a chance to watch how that game unfolded against the Colts, and I'll be honest with you. If Peyton Manning is healthy in that game, the Broncos beat the Colts by at least 3 touchdowns. Because the Colts offense, although they put up 24 points, it wasn't like, wow, they looked really good. They were very, very average in that game. Here's the way that I like to say it, though. Did John Fox did the Broncos make the right move making a change of John Fox? I do believe they did, yes. Because, let's put it this way. If Peyton Manning is truly considering not coming back, and you need to make sure Brock Osweiler is ready, why are you entrusting it to a defensive-minded head coach? Because he's not going to be able to give that Brock Osweiler the, how should I put this, the tutelage he needs. I mean, yeah, he's getting tutelage a lot just from being around Peyton Manning, but the point remains the same. Young quarterback, you need an offensive-minded head coach. Let's look at it this way. Look at what happened when Bill Walsh drafted Joe Montana. By Montana's third year, he was one of the 2 or 3 best quarterbacks in the game, and he'd already won a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl MVP award. Look at I'm trying to think of a really good example. I mean, Vince Lombardi turned Bart Starr into an All-Pro and one of the best to ever play the game. What George Seifert and Bill Walsh did for Steve Young was, I think, impressive enough as it is as well. The way that I look at it is this. The Broncos were doing really good, and they were going to put up good regular seasons with John Fox. They're going to continue to put up good 13, 12-win regular seasons with John Fox. But they're going to continue to go 1-1 in the playoffs. Because quite honestly, I put a lot of the blame on John Fox for what happened the last 2 years in the playoffs. I put a little less because of Peyton's injury this year, but I also still feel that had he probably made some better play calling, and had he maybe, instructed Adam Gase to maybe throw some shorter passes and maybe try to get some yards after the catch a little more than what they did, then I think that the result would have been a little different. As for the future of the Broncos, there's one guy that I'm thinking of that is currently a head coaching candidate that everybody's going to think that I'm nuts for the Broncos giving him a chance. But the man that I really do believe that the Denver Broncos should look at is Mike Shanahan. I do. Now, personally, I'm not a fan of Mike Shanahan because I think that he absolutely botched, beyond belief, Robert Griffin III's first 3 years as an NFL quarterback. He set him back for the third one and the second one by not making him sit whenever he won the first one, whenever he had the first year. He's a very good football coach. He's won 2 Super Bowls. He's won the AFC 4 times. Well, 2 of them were as an offensive coordinator. But just remember this about Mike Shanahan. Mike Shanahan and John Elway, when they were together, had their best years together. From 84 to 87, when he was the offensive coordinator of the Broncos, and Elway was still a young guy, as an offensive assistant from 1990 to 1991. And then you look at the last 4 years of Elway's career. Elway had some of his most efficient years, and best part, Shanahan was there. Shanahan's going to use that zone blocking, get C.J. Anderson all the rushing yards he can get, and take so much pressure off Peyton Manning if Peyton decides to come back. So I do believe that, yes, Mike Shanahan is, in my opinion, the best candidate to take over the job as the Broncos head coach. Mark Trestman's a possibility, but the reason why I don't look at Mark Trestman is because, one, look at the pedigree, look at the difference. A 2-time Super Bowl champion versus a guy who spent all prior to the last 2 years, every year of his career in the Canadian Football League. No offense to Trestman, he's a great guy, but he doesn't have it. Getting a team like this Bronco team that has had a playoff experience, that has lost a Super Bowl, to win a Super Bowl is going to take a guy who's won a Super Bowl. And, again, other coaches that might pop up like Mike Smith, they're just not good candidates. And the reason why is because they never really won much in the playoffs. Shanahan has 8 playoff wins and 2 Super Bowls. I think that kind of qualifies him. And I know the reason why he left in 2008 was because the Broncos were really starting to go downhill. They had not made the playoffs in the last 3 years he was there, and they should have made it in the 2008 season had they not choked. But again, John Elway wasn't there. John Elway was not there at the time. And John Elway pretty much has taken this team and rebuilt it from scratch. He took it from a team that won 4 games in 2010 to a team that made the Super Bowl in 2013. That's really impressive. Other coaches like Gary Kubiak, Mike Smith, they're not good candidates because I think they're better off coaching one side of the football. And that's a theory that I have about head coaches, in that there are certain coaches in the NFL that may come from one side of the football that can run a team, offense, defense, special teams in its entirety. But there are other coaches who I believe are simply meant to be one side of the football. And I think Gary Kubiak's a great example of that. I think Jay Gruden's a really good example of that because he's just botching everything in Washington, particularly in the defensive side. But here's where my opinion stays firm. I believe that John Fox and the Broncos parting way was the right choice because, put it this way, Elway is in my opinion, the greatest clutch quarterback in the history of the game. And he had the quarterback record for wins for how many years till Favre broke it. There's a reason why he did it, and that's having a killer instinct and getting the job done and being able to realize that, you know what, the mindset is I'm going to kick your ass and I don't care what I have to do. John Fox, no offense to him, I think he's too nice of a guy. I think he's a little too nice of a guy to really be a coach who has that killer instinct that can get you over the hump. But anyway, that's pretty much all I have for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I will be back hopefully soon. I'm going to probably pick one of the 2 nights coming up and doing my Super Bowl my NFC and AFC Championship game previews between the Seahawks, Packers, and Patriots, Colts. I work 3 to 11 Thursday, Friday, so I'm going to try to maybe squeeze one in after work on Thursday and then one after work on Friday. But hopefully everybody here takes care and has a good one, everybody.